A person is born with a mysterious cross on the back of the palm, which conceals magical power. This sign can appear in two forms, with 4 or 2 branches. The fourth cross has a short range, but it is impressive with high power and lightning-fast firing speed, and it is also the fastest to activate. This type of cross is effectively used in close combat. The third type of cross has significant firepower, complemented by extended range capabilities, making it particularly useful in medium-range engagements. In contrast, the second cross specializes in intense fire, although its direct power figures are not as high. Thanks to its impressive range, it becomes of immense value for long-range attacks. This is the first cross that appeared on the main character's arm. Quickly reaching the limits of its capabilities in battles, it does not bring any advantages. The firepower remains quite limited. He can't even activate magic. And this cross is obviously absurdly specialized in manufacturing. Magical warrior. The protagonist conducts an experiment in which he uses the power of the first cross, which is usually unsuitable for combat. This is what activates the meteorite. The first cross focuses purely on artifacts. In other words, if you use magical tools, magic is activated, while ordinary objects do not invoke this power. As a result, the hero sank the island. The powerful meteor shower that appeared in the sky was caused by magic that mercilessly attracted meteorites to the ground. This magic, activated by cross-coupling of forces, turned out to be similar to another famous spell. Like the second, this option can be used without the use of additional devices. To create magical tools, the primary cross had to be used first, but this process also takes some time. Activation, which showed his powerlessness in the face of this cunning trick. That part of the world, which is called outer space here, is, according to legend, inhabited by creatures with incredible power, also known as divine beasts. He seeks to challenge those rivals who believe their magical theory is not perfect enough, that their magic cannot even... He uses the full force of his abilities. This is his ultimate technique. According to Guy, this is because during the battle he carefully monitors the changes in the direction of the enemy's magical flow. Thanks to this, he guesses the enemy's future spell in advance. But with a cross like his, the opportunities for development become significantly limited. The first path is to master a mysterious magical theory that seems to be possessed by celestial beasts with advanced techniques. Thanks to this power, one can bring the dead back to life or travel through time, performing actions that are inaccessible to ordinary magic. In addition, it allows one to enlarge or strengthen muscles. However, to master these techniques, one must confront celestial monsters. It's like asking which came first, the chicken or the egg. The probability of this development is extremely. The second option is reincarnation into a new body, but there is no guarantee that it will match his wishes. Another scenario is that the hero will take a completely different path. The third option is to find allies who will strengthen his fighting power. Of course, he came to this conclusion a long time ago. He repeatedly tried to escape, but each time his comrades retreated, because they did not believe in the power of their own story. It is necessary to find reliable allies who will not be afraid and will remain loyal even in the most difficult moments. Maybe it is worth turning to the demons? But no, they will refuse to ally with him because their goal is to doom people to destruction. Aren't there other races that can use magic, like dragons? The dragons address the others, emphasizing that this opportunity only comes once in a lifetime. 100 years ago, they had almost been destroyed by a man named Gaius, but now that he was gone, they had nothing to fear. One of the dragons suggested wiping out humans from the face of the entire earth and causing a real bloodbath. Time for revenge. At that moment, Guy suddenly lowered himself to the monster's forehead, shocking the dragon, who seemed to be hoping for a better life. He apologized for the suffering caused during his parade, but remained alive. It became obvious to everyone present that it was Guy himself standing before them. It was unusual to see him alive, having not been seen anywhere for 100 years. I didn't even think about it. Time flies when you're immersed in your research. Guy reassured me. Don't worry, I'm not here to argue. These words came as a surprise to everyone. Looking for allies, Guy asked where the most powerful dragons could be found. And if there were none, a dragon with great potential would do. According to the monster, if he were interested in a truly powerful dragon, he would already be among its prey. After all, this dragon had already marked him as its prey. He could be considered a stupid and arrogant person. However, the attack had no effect on... Many thought Death was an ordinary dragon. But in fact, he was a manifestation of high-tech, ingenious magic. by adding magical power to the weak point of the spell formula. The fire was instantly extinguished. The fact that the dragon's flames dissipated amazed everyone. However, the magical power involved was not wasted. It was reckless to waste such powerful energy, so Guy decided to return it to the dragon. He deflected the magical power, directing it back against the opponent. With one devastating blow, he crushed the dragon. The other dragons could not believe that a single attack could bring such an impressive result. For one of the dragons, the breath was essentially a formula. By piercing its vulnerable spot and destroying this algorithm, one could steal magical power. He had heard that this was the principle behind the hunter's tactics. Protagonist suggested returning to the familiar theme of mighty dragons. Having lost his informant, he asked if there was anyone who could replace him. He replied that north of this place was a temple where a dragon, known as the Dragon of Darkness, resided. What kind of dragon was this, and was it really as described? It turns out that this dragon was sent to help people in exchange for jewels. It's painful to admit, but its power is real. Otherwise it would have gone extinct long ago. He concluded that his true desire was to get rid of this dragon. However, since Guy was tirelessly seeking new allies, this information in no way contradicted the information already received. The Protagonist thanked him and said he would try his luck there. The dragons exchanged sharp glances. He realized that he would not be able to defend against all the dragon breaths at once. They believed he could withstand one blow, but not several. The dragons were glad to be rid of Guy. From now on, the whole world belonged to them. He struck a blow and warned them not to jump to conclusions that his victory was already assured. Stunned, he realized that their minds were too limited to comprehend the power of this magical phenomenon. At first, he had intended to leave them alone, but their unexpected attack forced him to answer the challenge. That was why he was still alive, Guy explained, noting that it was incredibly difficult to kill him with such magic. After that, he decided to demonstrate exactly how to tame his power. This is a raw magical stone, also known as a shit stone. It is not suitable for use as a magical tool, as the eye will completely fill it with the power of magic. These things don't have the power to hold such enormous magical energy. By combining it with the spell that lives at the heart of the magic stone, thanks to the unwavering bond, it is possible to prevent its destruction. This sophisticated magical ritual belongs to the treasury of knowledge of the first coat of arms. As a result, an unstable stone is formed, filled with a large amount of magical energy that is about to be released, trying to break out. Baggins realized that the situation was out of control. He decided to stop the monster by using the breathing technique, as he doubted that the barrier he had created would last long. Having repelled the blow, he finally said goodbye, to repay the debt for the information he had provided about the Dragon of Darkness. If life was worth its weight in gold to him, Gaius did not understand any unnecessary waste. Temple of the Dragon of Darkness. He realized that he was in the exact place the dragon had spoken of. On the other side, a pulse of mana could be felt, indicating the creature's incredible power. Guy immediately realized that this was not a matter of lightness, and hoped that this dragon was still young and would not be as naively simple as its older representatives. He will die last. The dragon asked why the man had come here. Gase replied that there were rumors of a dragon that helped people in exchange for valuable things. Inside they found a thread decorated with exquisite jewelry. The darkness turned to him full of mystery and asked, "What is your wish? And what are you willing to give in exchange?" He expressed his desire to become his companion, noting that the reward could be discussed later. To impress the creature, Gaia needed an ally like him, who would fight side by side. He promised to take care of the equipment and give the dragon additional power. The protagonist did not hesitate and asked a few clarifying questions. Dragging proved to be quite a difficult challenge, and it remained so, and he left. Then the man said that he wanted the one who had once promised to strengthen his strength to become his companion. Because people, as they say, are extremely modest. How funny. The guy thanked him for. It turned out that this was not the case. The Dragon of Darkness has declared that he is not going to give in. He helps people only for a reward, if he continues like this, he will undoubtedly take his life. Whether he stays around will be determined by the Lord's will. According to the creature, it takes on any task it sees fit. However, dragons like it are notorious for their extreme greed, and besides, there is no stone in the world for which it would agree to work. A stone that holds immense significance for dragons for many reasons. But does the young creature realize this? The monster asked where Dai had gotten this object from. Dai realized that the dragon already knew about it. He himself had found it in the vicinity of Mount Diarona, which I will now tell you about. Gabalos was an evil dragon king who ruled the lands around Mount Rancia approximately 150 years ago. He was considered the most powerful of the dragons, and his rule resulted in tens of thousands of deaths, both human and dragon. This stone comes from his heart, which contains a rare artifact made from blood known as the Dragon Slayer Stunner. The Dragon of Darkness realized exactly how he had come to be at the disposal of man. He killed him. Gay decided to tell how it all happened. He fought with it. At first he wanted to retreat and not take any life, but it turned out that the creature was weaker, and events unfolded according to a predetermined scenario. The main character was still searching for an answer. Will the dragon become his companion if he gives him this stone? The creature wondered. What will happen if it says this word? He replied that in this way he would acquire two similar stones. This caused the dragon to react, and I'm not going to bow down to. For Guy, this deal turned out to be profitable. We must try not to take his life. Death is painful. So let him try to avoid it himself. The monster bowed its head and, reluctantly admitting its guilt, apologized. The KS was left in a state of confusion, not realizing what was wrong. We will fulfill any of his wishes, as long as we don't have to kill. Don't be so impudent. Foloth became interested in its jewels. Take as many as you want, because the possibilities are endless. The creature tirelessly continued its pleas. The castle was completely destroyed, and the power of the dragon was impressive. I just wanted to make sure he could hear him. Heiss assured me that he wouldn't kill him if he joined him, because after all, a dragon. I remembered how the monster had pointed out that dragons were proud creatures. I could ask, what did he want if he killed Diabolo? Deus reassured him. There was no need to worry because soon he would be stronger than that kid. He turned out to be a lizard, just like the legend says, the evil dragon king. However, according to Guy, his powers were far from what he expected. That's why Guy asked if he could turn into a human. Dragons have the unique ability to transform into humans. Without a doubt, in their natural form, they are incredibly powerful. They can breathe fire and demonstrate other extraordinary powers. However, Guy believes that it is in human form that their potential is fully revealed. After transformation, they retain both physical and magical strength, and in addition, they gain the ability to possess various types of magic, like real people. Due to the relatively simple structure of their magical schemes, unlike human ones, they are deprived of the opportunity to master higher-level magic. To them, however, thanks to their help you can get closer. The transformation into a girl was completely unexpected. She instantly realized that she needed clothes and offered to wear this outfit, because it seemed like it belonged to her. She wondered how young she really was, because it seemed like she had no basic knowledge at all, which undoubtedly indicated her very young age. The girl asked if she was dressed appropriately, as she was Iris, the dark dragon. Her face lit up with genuine joy upon meeting you. Dragons do not lose their protective power even in human form, so she does not need plate armor. Simple clothes will be quite satisfactory. The boy remembered the weapon. Despite being perceived as fragile, the boy unwaveringly radiated pride. Made from ultra-pure magical steel that elevates magical abilities to the heavens, this product allows even a 3-year-old to cast spells. Moreover, thanks to its minimal weight, simplicity, and elegant design, it delivers excellent results. According to the guy, no one expected him to be used like this. He was sure she didn't know about it. After that, he bent over a few more times. He coated it with a coating of soft magical steel alloyed with a high-quality manta alloy, which was guaranteed to prevent it from bending. He swung his weapon. It remained unbreakable, but it had lost its elegance, now resembling a barbarian axe. His magical device rang, although he didn't remember activating it. The girl, noticing the unusual sound, asked with interest, "Monster ID?" As soon as a powerful demon is nearby, the device immediately starts signaling. Just press a button, and it will guide you directly to it. It seemed that Guy was ready to fight powerful demons, but killing them was starting to feel monotonous. So he switched the mode. Now the system only showed enemies with a level not lower than diabolism, to fight someone truly strong. This confused the girl, because she could not imagine that ordinary people would enjoy such a challenge. I asked what she was doing. Iris felt much more comfortable moving around on all fours. Gaius was convinced that if they appeared like this, the enemy would undoubtedly be shocked. Such a move could change the course of events even there. The enemy forces were approaching inexorably. The representative of the 8th class, Lord O, Already at this moment, someone desperately entered into battle with the enemy. For this couple, destroying the 8th rank demons was a simple matter. After all, they were 11th grade students, the most powerful warriors in the kingdom, known to everyone by the name Gerald, the Witch of Doom and Rider, the demagogue of the blacks. On the border of the kingdom of man, the children were playing hide-and-seek with great enthusiasm. One boy noticed strange movement behind the house. Among the company of boys, he came across something incredibly creepy. A huge ogre stands before you. The ogre swung his weapon, which instantly took the child's life. The commander was told that the search was complete. No survivors could be found. He realized that there had been a sudden, blatant attack. Suddenly, something appeared that instantly plunged those present into an atmosphere of true horror, as if they were the heroes of a horror movie. Too big, most likely an 8th grader, so he has already become the owner of an O. Delta delivers a devastating blow to the neck. I witnessed how the monster destroyed so many enemies with one mighty blow. Its power was amazing, and the knights were terrified. The commander ordered to hold the ranks. After all, if they fell, who would be left to protect the people? I couldn't imagine how they would handle this. Suddenly, a girl using a binding arrow appeared, and immediately called one of her comrades, and the monster instantly fell to the ground. They were pleasantly surprised, because this enemy was defeated by just 2 people, true daredevils and adventurers. The girl used her healing skills, which came as a surprise to the enemy. The magic bow expert Biles, the magical swordsman Kido, and the Saint Noel. They all belonged to the class. The knights, expecting just such determination from the 10th grade adventurers, watched as the task was completed with incredible speed. Thanks to their efficiency, everyone was filled with boundless gratitude. Without this help, they simply would not have been able to cope. He decided to take matters into his own hands, using his skills in drawing and installation. The Ventures team is undoubtedly ready for a fierce battle. It was a gathering of gentlemen, although you don't usually see gentlemen in groups. For some reason there were so many of them. The knights realized that their end was approaching. The heroine completely destroyed her enemies with one powerful blow. Soon everyone realized that she was a student of the 11th grade. It was Juro Lebar. And then Draft appeared, the mayor's most powerful sorcerer. He is assigned to destroy all monsters by order of His Highness. The justification for this order was the huge number of monsters, which caused deep indignation. Noticing signs of magical activity, she immediately set out in search of its traces. A group of lords had also gathered there, but no one could understand what was happening. The soldiers were about to launch an attack, and the knights were scattered across the battlefield. He was offered to leave a couple of monsters behind. He was convinced that once people realized that they were just ordinary monsters, they would stop running from them. It became obvious to everyone. Ryder was here, and thanks to his appearance, hope had returned. Today, the 2 most powerful warriors of the 11th class kingdom gathered in battle, the Witch of Doom Jurl and the demigod of the Sword Rider. The current task is to defeat the dragon. This is the Lonely Lemain, a terrible warrior who has already devastated 18 cities and villages. Moreover, he already has his own dragon. He has over 70,000 victims, Reuters and Yuri. Both 11th graders, and only them, are sent to destroy them. And they have incredible abilities unknown to humanity. Their single breath can turn an ordinary city into ashes. If you look back in history, you can find cases when several countries were completely destroyed thanks to such creatures. Times have long passed. It has been 200 years since the dragons last burned the city to the ground. Currently, no state knows how to confront dragons. It is said that over 200 years ago, there lived a wise man who hunted dragons, disguising his activities as training. He confidently demonstrated that destroying them was quite achievable. A dragon capable of completely destroying an entire. It really exists, and it strives to make it happen. There are too many enemies, and it seems like there are even more of them. That's why they are located on the right. And Ryder realized that the time had come for them. He noted that only they would be able to move forward, and the rest would have to return to the room. Don't worry about them. If they become a burden, you can just leave them behind. They're ready. Everyone instantly understood that this was a magical idea. He headed towards each of them. Meanwhile, Uriel managed to create an obstacle for. Without a doubt, it was a ray of light, both simple and incredibly swift. This technique usually does not cause fatal damage to small creatures, as it is used mainly for a precise hit in the enemy's eyes. Mono was tasked with neutralizing such an enemy with the first shot. But a person endowed with such power cannot agree to such a task. Luckily, her defensive reflex worked. Juril asked curiously, "Who are you?" He replied that he was the one sent to destroy them, because the Dragon of Terror still lives. He, as a human, cannot use dragon breath, his most powerful weapon. Even when he absorbs the power of this form, his powers are still significantly reduced. Everyone knows this, but Limey and Sawditch had much more information about him. Since circumstances had developed a certain way, Jurel decided to show him something. The technology she is working on is called Comet Fall. It is extremely complex, requires considerable effort and a long time. If everything works out, no living thing will be able to resist this impact. She only has one chance. He only uses his breath against pests, because in human form it is easier to fight them. However, she felt that he did not consider her an ordinary pest. The opponent assured her that he would not classify her as such. She guessed that he did not know about the spell yet, because there was still plenty of time. "Thank you." She asked what was hiding behind her back and directed a beam of light. He noted that she was saved in time from an imp attack. He admitted that the action was somewhat unfinished. He felt grateful for his life, even though, after all, he was only an 11th grader. However, she felt the healing energy coming in and didn't remember him ever being here. He could use magic, but his ability only lasted a moment. He realized that it was time to use this tool. The witch asked with interest what it was. It turned out that it was a device for identifying monsters. The girl noticed that it resembled something familiar, a sample amulet. Ryder decided to buy them some time by delaying the development of events. Jurel must seize this opportunity immediately. He realized that the situation had turned into a close combat and decided to use his sword. The opponent noted that although it looked decent for a human, such strength could not be compared to the draft. He noticed a mystical barrier. Knowing that this would definitely happen, he never planned to retreat. According to the enemy, it seemed like the object was moving away, as if it wasn't even trying to scratch him. The man replied that it had opened up, and that was why the competition had become so... The boy thought to himself, she just finished her ritual. It's a shame they didn't talk more. It would have been quite funny. They succeeded. I doubt death has any power over him. Regarding the spell. According to him, only 3 people in this century are capable of using the power of the comet's fall. The raiders are relentlessly advancing. He instantly regained his strength. However, it seemed that this was not enough. If they truly believed that this spell could kill him, Jurel was surprised. Even a direct blow could not break him, and she could not understand how, in principle, to kill such a monster. He felt the pleasure of meeting a worthy opponent, because they were facing a battle that would become legendary. Of course, he successfully used his unique technique, blinding. As he prepared to strike his opponent, Lime realized that his strength had finally reached a level comparable to drag. She felt that something had to be decided urgently. Without hesitation, she decided to use another of her trump cards to its full potential. Now there was no room for error. Her mana was rapidly running out. Star. This spell surpasses the previous one in power, as it requires an incredibly large amount of mana, which makes its use extremely risky for the sorcerer. The time has come. Let me teach Ryder how to control his immense mana, for such power in excess can be a great risk to a sorcerer. The enemy cut his body in half, taking his life with one merciless blow. But Gerald's spell was complete. His death is only the beginning of a new era. He will unleash a shooting star. Even from such a distance, it is impossible to avoid the blow. A direct hit. Let him die, and his existence will be erased from this world. He deflected the blow using a powerful air shield. This stunned everyone. Sagan was surprised that she even knew its name, and wondered what she would cook this time. He couldn't believe he had been able to break such a spell. Or was he just kidding them? She had no choice but to let them go. They were doomed. Furthermore, the air barrier had transformed into a dome, surrounding them and restricting her movements. She didn't even have the chance to ask a question. She realized her final moment had come as the enemy leaned in towards her. He realized why he had decided to keep her alive. Gerald asked, "Do you want her to experience this?" In fact, there is a special power hidden in this, which challenges established ideas about magic. It resembles the barrier that Lemaine is using now, although she cannot use it at the moment. The girl, after all, did not want to become a woman in any way. He didn't want her to conclude that he liked something like that. Circumstances left him no choice. Allowing this to happen was a real crime against his manhood. He instantly realized that the barrier was beginning to crumble. Limey wondered if it was Jareel's doing, but she had no way of breaking it. He realized that 2 people were interfering, Chaos and Iris. Gerald realized that the girl next to him was not actually human. The enemy asked the question, "Who are you?" It was a false alarm. Iris asked if he wanted to avoid a fight, or she suggested continuing to limp. He refused this step. But still, it's not like they were immortal. The enemy wondered where they came from in the first place. He had arrived at the summons of the monsterologist, but he immediately realized he was too late. Besides, he didn't like fighting a dragon at all. The companion was unsure whether he was in the mood for battle. Deus saw no point in engaging in battle with such a weak and indifferent person. But he could not let her just lie there. Let go of Ural. The girl remembered how Ryder had told her about the true nature of the monster. The enemy ordered the man not to leave the place and immediately used blocking techniques. Noticing that forbidden magic had been used, Lemon realized that the man also understood the situation. He immediately asked him about his next steps. She was amazed that someone else knew about the forbidden magic. But how had he recognized its essence so quickly and, moreover, overcome the barrier? The girl was eager to know who he was. He continued that, unfortunately, Lemon is not a being from the dark depths of space, so his powers are quite limited. The spell looks like a complete mess, but it is worth trying to disassemble its structure, although it is extremely difficult to do so. He realized that he was capable of analyzing spells incredibly quickly, an ability that surpassed any human ability. The enemy hoped that a powerful barrier would crush this guy, and he realized that the enemy would not be inclined to believe his words until he himself began to tremble. With his own hands, he was able to break what seemed invincible, and now beneath him is an unwavering stick. He noted that they managed to surprise the enemy unexpectedly. However, the barrier turned out to be extremely fragile. Every step threatened its destruction. I couldn't understand how he managed to break through the seemingly unbreakable barrier of the highest level, and it didn't comfort me at all. I asked the question, how could such a weakling possess forbidden magic? It was at this moment that he realized that the enemy was deliberately hiding his true power. Every word he said caused more and more surprise, and Gaius persistently forced him to demonstrate it. Over time, he begins to transform into, he has 10 seconds to cast the spell. If he doesn't want to meet his doom, he'll have to beef up his defenses immediately. Contact Iris. He's about to start teaching her combat techniques, so make sure she memorizes each one carefully. The process of creating a spell takes an extremely long time because it is only about the initial level. He was completely unaware of his actions until he noticed the level 1 mark. According to his calculations, with the level 3 mark, creating a meteor shower would only take 1/10 of a second, and the current mark made the process take half a second. An unjustified waste of time. Iris was surprised. His assurance that the creation would take only 10 seconds sounded incredible. However, the guy calmly replied that he had nothing to do with it. He wanted him to rush at him with all his strength. Real realized that the creation time of all his spells was extremely slow. In the end, he admitted that he had first-level abilities. He noticed her and wished for her death. The witch realized that the beam of light had time to hit this guy instantly. If it could put an end to a rank 10 adventurer, the owner of the first mark clearly didn't have enough chances. Gaze threw his sword. Even in such a critical situation, he managed to repel the blow. The girl realized that she was not just a man. The opponent was stunned. Such reflexes are unusual for humans. Hayes replied that it was not about reflexes at all, and asked if he was aware of it. He asked Iris if she understood why he had managed to evade him so easily. This caused him indescribable embarrassment. According to Guy, this is because during the battle he carefully monitors the changes in the direction of the enemy's magical flow. Thanks to this, he guesses the enemy's future spell in advance. He realized that his combat experience was significant, so he decided to demonstrate the true power of his strength. Gerald noted his virtuoso mastery of magic. He decided to use a blade that cuts through space. However, his opponent's sword proved to be a powerless obstacle. It created a real spatial rift. He drew his sword, which became an insurmountable obstacle to the enemy's blade. The subsequent events stunned everyone present. The Protagonist brilliantly repelled the space slash with his sword, demonstrating incredible agility. However, Lemaine was convinced that this was impossible. To the guy, if you enchant the weapon, it won't be difficult to deflect even a simple spell. You were surprised by the fact that Spatial Seaver is actually considered an easy spell. 4 seconds later, he asked what else he had. He decided to apply radical treatment methods. He realized that his magical power had grown incredibly, and he was starting to transform into a dragon. Deus was surprised, because finally the boy decided to show something worth noting. He is a hybrid of dragon and human. His magical powers are much more powerful. He can now use human magic, enhancing it with the power of dragons. I feel it, the enemy said proudly, gazing at him. Eventually, Gaius found himself on the verge of death. So he unleashed a devastating magical wave. He was convinced that no barrier could withstand the effects of such a spell. But his calculations turned out to be erroneous. He was convinced that people were too defenseless against them, just a pitiful mass. The position remained unwavering. Only 3 seconds remained. Only 2 seconds remained. He was convinced that this was the opponent's most powerful attack. Perhaps now he would demonstrate his full strength. It was simply impossible. Jurel was amazed that his opponent had chosen to use summoning circles to attack. Instead of the usual defensive spell, he instantly responded with a powerful counterattack, even though his own magic circle seemed too small. The girl could not understand how he managed to defend himself in this way. For the boy, the incomplete structure of the spell is too fragile. If you hit him right in the heart, you can instantly destroy everything. You are real. He realized that at the same moment that the spell was steadily moving forward, he was carefully examining its structural flaws. Iris replied that she was listening carefully. Lamine decided to fight until his last breath. Time was up. It was his next move. Deus created a meteor. He strongly advised us to hurry up if there was still something left in stock. Otherwise, Limon. The enemy was convinced that the fall of the meteorite would not break through the protective barrier of the volcano. He knew very well that barrier spells were his horse up his sleeve. It was thanks to them that he was able to hide from the powerful blow of the shooting star. Even a lower-level spell, similar to the fall of a meteorite, would not have been able to disturb him. No matter how skilled he was, it was beyond his power to win the fight. They expressed doubt that everything will necessarily be okay with him, and wonder what others will do. She was amazed at how effortlessly he had defeated the terror dragon Lemon. She wondered, who was he really? Geist saw no trace of forbidden magic. He understood that this was how it was supposed to end, although it still brought a sense of regret. To the left of the enemy was the Dragon Soul Stone, but its appearance was severely distorted. It seemed that the forbidden magic had had a profound effect on it. The dragon's body is gone, but its stone remains invaluable for future research. By studying it, the protagonist has a chance to penetrate the depths of mysterious forbidden mathematics. He realized that his strength was many times greater than hers, although she was considered the best in the kingdom. The girl turned to her. As for the spell that causes the meteorite to fall, she was eager to uncover the secret of its action. She replied that it was exactly what she was looking for. According to Ural, even the power of a shooting star was not enough to break his protective barriers. However, he is radically different from the one she knew. He realized that this was exactly how he had felt at that moment. The guy realized that it was she who had taken advantage of the shooting scene. The girl thought she had managed to attract his attention. Perhaps thanks to this she could take the place of an apprentice, like the other girl. Her second-level mark gave her access to powerful spells, but even if Gerald asked for training, she doubted that he would agree. According to Gass, if there was something important, it was worth saying it immediately. However, the girl felt that the condition was unfair. You always had to be ready to give something in return. This might have caught his attention. Over time, he began to be interested in forbidden topics. It wouldn't be surprising if Guy caught that in her. He'd no doubt notice, but she still didn't know what he was planning to do to her. Human experimentation. The girl confidently assumed that using her as a toy wouldn't raise any objections from him. Be vigilant. Even the smallest mistake can have fatal consequences for her. She was asked if she was interested in the meteorite fall, and she felt a little embarrassed. She said he thought she was interested. He asked for her opinion, but Iris was so confused that she didn't know how to respond. Her interest was obvious. There was no turning back. The intention to escape would have been incredibly irrational. Interest in him seems extremely attractive, as if his mysterious personality invited one to unravel all its secrets. He didn't mean to be rude, but his target was only level 1 and not at all suitable for evil intentions. He replied that it was common knowledge, so her words were not worth his attention. He wondered in surprise why, despite all the events, his strength had turned out to be so incredible. He realized that she was attracted to his strength. According to him, it was the result of hard training and his genius, although he himself could not explain it exactly. She promised to ask him to teach her, because she was ready for anything. This step of hers unexpectedly surprised those around her, and the guy immediately asked why she was so determined to start. Previously, her desire was limited to defeating someone, but now she wants to kill. It is noticeable that their goals turned out to be similar. However, he intended to add something else. Was this person connected to the forbidden magic hidden within? The girl realized that he knew about the magic that lived inside her. Deus had known this from the very beginning, for her power carried echoes of distortion. The jury was convinced that she had been able to hide this fact. The protagonist asked Iris if she was aware of this detail. However, the girl did not understand what he was talking about. He made sure that she really missed this nuance, although it was completely obvious to her. Despite everything, she would still be able to absorb his knowledge. This was the condition of her training. For such an achievement, Uriel was ready to sacrifice even her hand, and if necessary, both of them. The protagonist wanted her to reveal to him the secrets of supreme magic, its effects, shortcomings, and methods of application. She handed him the book. Although it may take a long time, this is exactly what you need. Please note, the author of the book is Euro Leventroff, that is, she herself. This work contains all the necessary knowledge about forbidden magic. The guy shared that he dreams of reading it. She mentioned another condition. It must achieve the same level of competitiveness. Wanting to create his own group, he looked for like-minded people, because it would be much easier to train them all. The chosen mark is a perfect fit for her quest to become stronger. But she also possesses another talent. He has already been able to realize immense combat potential with his first mark, and thanks to its abilities, achieving a similar effect will take much less time and effort. We unanimously decided to become his companions. Knowing about her forbidden magic, she was sure that she would soon be subjected to experiments. The boy jokingly noted that it sounded like a plan. Iris was glad that new companions had joined their company, but hunger was not giving her peace. She is considered one of the most powerful in the kingdom, the Witch of Destruction. However, despite this title, she could not even scratch Lemon. It seems that her title was so blinding that she killed him as if it were just a child. He dreamed of her becoming his companion. Uriel could not comprehend who this man really was, because his power was simply incredible. However, there was something about him that immediately caught her attention. He watched the girl thoughtfully, trying to understand who she was. Her magical aura was unlike a human's, but it was obvious that she had a mentor next to her, teaching her something extraordinary. Noticing that she was hungry, the girl offered her some food. I really liked that. The taste of the dish made an incredible impression on me. Uriel asked with interest, "Is it really not here?" She replied that she was a dark dragon. Remember that she was praised for her incredible strength and fearless courage. He had just asked permission to make his request. She hoped Gerald would help her understand his words as they began to take on an incomprehensible tone. Hearing the monster's signal, he confidently thought that a powerful creature was waiting for him. But the reality turned out to be completely different. Only a dragon. However, he still gained something valuable. He met a man who willingly became his companion. The girls seemed to get a little more. Has a second mark, perfect for long-range spells. In addition, she possesses the forbidden magic that he has long dreamed of mastering, although she is still unable to use it properly. And that very day, two unusual companions appeared on his path, whom one could meet everywhere. The negative memories of that never faded. Everything was great until their first task came. They left it for... The words indicate that you need to act immediately. Make sure to make a lasting impression so they don't leave right away. Be careful with every move. As a feminine noun, it sounded like something that aroused sympathy from the first chord. This seemed to scare Uriel. He noticed that Iris had been acting very strangely lately. We need to keep a closer eye on her to avoid any unforeseen chaos. As Uriel was able to determine with his magic, Iris was not human, and therefore lacked common sense. Iris realized she needed to improve her ability to understand people. Meanwhile, Gerald pondered thoughtfully who could be harassing her. Notice her extremely strange reaction. Could she possibly think that he is incapable of such a task? After all, even before he entered the world of research, Guy lived among people, so understanding is not a problem for him. She asked if she could find out his name, and instantly, as soon as Uriel answered, he realized that he had never introduced himself to this world before. He realized that he had become the same guy everyone had high hopes for, a legendary battle mage who disappeared centuries ago. He has destroyed countless magical creatures, completed countless missions of the highest complexity, and saved the kingdom from destruction on more than one occasion. A legend among legends, whose eyes possess such power that they can embody a god himself. He mentioned that he possessed a golden power capable of destroying all dragons. Iris was gripped by terror. fearing that her fate might be the same. She didn't remember ever setting such a goal, so she was able to calm down a bit. Over the past century, he had heard countless stories of dragons being destroyed. By the way, if you think about it, he himself had repeatedly destroyed several dragons at a similar level. Since they were his comrades, it was best to open up to them with the truth. In fact, he had killed about 100 dragons over the past century. The fact that he had killed so many in 100 years amazed Ural. She had never heard of dragons capable of such destructive destruction. According to him, it all happened because he destroyed them all in one day. Everyone was in complete shock. He assured her that he had no intention of killing his comrades and asked her to calm down. Iris remembered that she had heard about a magical ritual that required 108 dragon souls. Could she be the last one? The 108th? For Gaius, this was the first time he had heard of such a ritual. Intrigued, Iris asked, "Why did you destroy so many dragons?" In his opinion, their hostility towards him was too pronounced. Everything that happened was just an act of self-defense. Thus, he became completely obedient. The Gacies could not understand what had happened to her manner of speaking. Gerald found it incredible to destroy 100 dragons in one day, since almost all of them died only at the expense of… To be honest, Layman wasn't even particularly strong. But if he had said those words to her, she would have been seriously indignant. We should be careful with our words. According to him, this dragon had proved to be a real challenge and had become the strongest opponent he had ever destroyed. Uriel, in turn, did not approve of his achievements as proof of professionalism for a mid-level group. He didn't notice anything wrong with her and asked if she was okay. The girl replied that she couldn't even consider herself a representative of the middle-class group. In the end, despite being considered one of the most powerful in the kingdom, they were still defeated. She had previously thought, he realized that they were not at the average level. They were still considered the best in the kingdom. Over the past 10 years, he thought he had roughly reached their level of strength. But then something unusual happened. He asked if she had ever heard of a book he had written. She said it was called Introduction to Magical Combat. As it turned out, so there it is. He also wrote chapters on the practical application of battle magic and laid out the basic theories of magical battles. 100 years ago, they were convinced that this would promote the development of magical abilities, because they believed that familiarity with such materials would help sorcerers improve their skills. Owning that many books would put him almost on Gerald's level. She claimed that these books had the wrong title. Hayes asked what her assumption was. Perhaps he had made a mistake while copying the book. Books imbued with magic therefore remained incomprehensible to readers. She explains that these texts are really difficult for beginners. Even she could only understand some fragments. She also learned that scientists from the kingdom's Institute of Magic are working tirelessly every day to decipher them. He thought he had taken advantage of the language of this continent, but later found out that the difficulty lay not in the vocabulary, but in the content itself, which turned out to be too impenetrable to understand. Of course, Hayes missed some points, but if he had laid out everything in detail, the volume of the work would have reached about 100 volumes, no less. He decided, stop talking about books, let's focus on the team members. The first sign belongs to the first, and the second to Uriel. Iris is a true dragon, and her physical capabilities exceed all expectations. He asked Iris what she thought about which mark he was referring to. Hesitating, the girl hesitantly offered her own phrase. It turned out that the choice was correct. It was the fourth one that corresponded to his plan. From behind, he recognized a swordsman, marked with the fourth tag. The man was convinced that Gerald knew him too. The girl repeated his name with slight doubt, and the boy, without hesitation, asked if he was part of her group. At the same time, he was convinced that he belonged to hers. Reel asked, "Are you sure it's Ryder?" To which the guy replied that perhaps he had received this letter. He barely understands magic, but he has the ability to forget people's names. The guy decided to create something like a memory so that, according to testimony, Ryder sacrificed himself in a fight with Lemine, being cut in half, unless, of course, his resurrection scene took place. According to Gaia, she couldn't bring people back to life. He asked if she was sure he was gone. The girl went to visit, as if that was how it was supposed to be. He carefully examined his body and immediately understood. There were no signs that he had been cut in half. He suddenly opened his eyes and asked if they were talking about him. The girl was stunned that he had finally spoken, and she warned them not to despise him so lightly. Jurel could not understand why he was still alive. The girls replied that over time it was cut in half. People can die from something like this, but Reuters didn't share that opinion. Of course, in humans, the heart itself serves as the core of magic circles, and the brain is the main center of their control. Jurel knew nothing about this. Even if you lose your lower body, both circuits will remain active. However, if you haven't trained properly, you will soon start to suffer serious losses. Cutting a person in half does not guarantee their death, as the ability to regenerate allows them to repair even the most severe injuries. The jury unequivocally recognized that such a phenomenon is radically different from the norm. She walked away, calling her stupid. He was glad to finally meet someone who understood him. The girl, in turn, felt that her behavior looked strange. The swordsman asked if he was a good fit for their team. Gaia was sure that now her balanced group was complete, and it filled her with satisfaction. He finally had a complete team. It is noticeable that Jurel is not beaming with pleasure. Instead, her face is marked with concern. Perhaps she considers his actions senseless. We need to check if she realizes how much he genuinely cares for his comrades. He asked where the other members of their team were. Jurel understood that they were talking about adventurers from the 10th century, weaker than them. On the way here, they tried to convince them to return, but the dragon mercilessly destroyed them. They were too defenseless to be protected. As Jurel pointed out, this is where they seem to have been buried. The meteorite that hit this part of the Earth made a barely perceptible impact, but its impact is still felt. The traces of magic discovered are undeniable evidence that they are still alive, and although it seemed that the dragon did not pay attention to their vital signs, there were those among the dragons who enjoyed mocking them. In the end, everyone became a victim. Perhaps he was among them. It seemed like everything could still be saved. Everything was fine. The guy he recognized the restoration spell, but couldn't understand why it was being used on the ground. He was surprised that she didn't understand. Everyone, especially Jim, he realized the reason for their burial and pondered the mystery of the drought. He realized that what he had done was truly terrible. However, the boy replied, "Only a little." The reader laughed, because it seemed that the boys had returned to the usual rhythm of events. They decided to start their first group. He confidently declared that he had created this high-quality furniture in an instant. Is it true that the first sign is attached to him? The guy sadly confirmed this. The adventurers were ordered to set out immediately and report the destruction of the dragon. Meanwhile, they called a gathering to celebrate the formation of their own association. Up until this point, his groups had not lasted more than half a day, and the shortest they had lasted was only 2 hours. Almost 2 hours had passed since the start of the season. From the very beginning of their existence, he has persistently sought to avoid setting a new record. To keep them together, there is only one thing needed: a common goal. They need to find it and follow it for the sake of their unity. The guy would like to give them a handbag. Ryder's undoubted aspiration is to become stronger. Similarly, Jurel's goal is to gain greater strength, as both seek paths for personal growth. Apparently, she indicated that she also desired to gain power. He didn't remember her ever saying anything like that, but the girl assured him that she had. If her purpose was different, he asked her to express it more clearly and not to hesitate. Iris decided to keep question. D'Ask, how exactly did they intend to start? He firmly believed that facing strong opponents would help him improve his magical skills. Gerald was convinced that tireless work and constant improvement would allow him to find a loophole in his opponent, but she always exceeded his expectations. The next day, he tried again to prove that competing with powerful opponents is the key to mastery. But despite all his efforts, he was once again left on the sidelines. She was able to leave him behind. She realized that she was just copying other people's words. This power can be conditionally divided into 3 components: power, skill, and mastery. The first 2 aspects pose no problems. He will effortlessly teach them the necessary skills, and even the use of objects is not difficult. However, it is their skill that proves to be the most difficult challenge. Since their goal is to destroy small dragons like that, he is willing to personally arrange the exchange. He didn't think this dragon was small at first. Gerald was surprised that Gaius would personally take on the task of training them. He believed that once they had mastered the necessary skills, they would determine for themselves what exactly they needed, and then the next step would be choosing those things. She said that first they would gather everything they needed, and then she would start creating. As Guy mentioned, his first mark was the best basis for creating this masterpiece. For the sake of power. The hardest part is that being human, they have certain physical and magical limitations. Her power was to become unrivaled, and the girl promised to put in her utmost effort. However, she was surprised that Gaius was able to sense the potential of every person. According to Guy, a person struggles with labels their entire life. If judged solely by their fighting strength, they may seem weak. There is nothing that can stop them from finding a method to overcome ordinary human limits. Not everyone understood what Gaius was talking about. He was referring to powers that were not inherently human. However, Jurel immediately understood the gist of his words. In outer space, there are beings called the spirits of burning stars, and they possess similar power. The use of forbidden magic can also. Objects can be characterized by their properties, which suggests that Element 2 is capable of being both active and reproducible. If you kill a dragon, you won't be able to replicate its deadly breath. And if you destroy a dog, you won't gain any unique properties from it. This process is fundamentally different from that of the spirits of the burning stars. The winner has every right to take all the power of the opponent, thereby becoming even stronger. That is why the spirits tirelessly repeat this cycle until their power reaches absolute omnipotence. Having obtained at least one of the fragments, they could begin to use even a minimal part of their power. Reuter doubted that. He suggested checking whether his assumptions were justified and contacting Jim. The organization she belonged to entrusted her with a powerful power, the ultimate magic within herself, but she still cannot use it properly. They asked, "If you had the opportunity, would you slay today's dragon?" Juriel Fott confidently replied that she could do it. She didn't believe that her spirit fragment had just ended up on Earth. The Protagonist asked if she could tell him where they had gotten it from. Carol was completely ignorant of this. Information about forbidden magic was carefully hidden from mere mortals like her. Only the top of the organization possessed the true knowledge. Since the situation was like this, Guy decided to contact them himself. Ryder added that they would sincerely ask for help. Iris, putting all her soul and magical power, asked how exactly they planned to use magic. Ryder, showing off his muscles, left the girl in bewilderment, because she did not understand at all what he was talking about. The memory of the awards ceremony flooded his mind. Although the details were blurry, Yurao clearly remembered that it had taken place at headquarters. He suggested they go there, but the girl replied that it was not that simple. She had tried to pass through this place before, but all she found was a huge crater, as if formed by the fall of the sea. He concluded that they were trying to cover their tracks. He then asked Jurel if the person she wanted to eliminate belonged to this organization. It turned out that he was. Everyone knew him as an agent, and his influence in this organization is undeniable. The main character's first task is to track down all traces of the organization. Then he tirelessly searches for a way to obtain the forbidden magic, throwing himself into fierce battles with all enemies and improving his skills. He noted that it looked like a well-thought-out plan, and Gerald didn't object. First, they will go to the mayor's kingdom to report the murder of Lyman. As soon as this news reaches the organization, an invitation to a meeting will be sent immediately. Gaius, who has lived in this kingdom for a long time, has always admired its beauty. However, Ryder asked if he was sure that the situation still remains unchanged. He decided to immediately use his teleportation magic, and the surprise of the others was obvious. He could move incredibly long distances. Thanks to this, his team would arrive at the location first, even ahead of their partners. Before them stretched a majestic barrier, of which the inhabitants were immensely proud. Ryder had heard that on more than one occasion, this protective wall had saved the kingdom from imminent danger. He claimed that this impenetrable barrier had been erected many years ago by a powerful sorcerer. As it turned out, the creator was Gaius. The swordsman guessed that this was exactly what he meant. He didn't notice the guards at all and asked if anything unusual had happened, to which Jury replied that it had always been like this here. Since the enemy had no chance of breaking through the barrier, there was simply no need for an excess of guards. It is suggested that he not appear before the king for now, but instead go have a bite to eat with Iris. "I have a small request for you." He accompanied Lady Gerald and Sir Reuter, for they had already arrived. He instructed the king to report the incident. The guard replied that this would certainly be done. "We are Pastor Guy and Iris. It remains a mystery who they were. Entry is only possible if you have at least 1 kopeck. They stated that they had participated in the liquidation of Le Mans and had helped them in this, so they asked to be escorted along with the group." To this, the guard replied that even if she had asked, the final decision belonged to His Majesty. He explained that, as a battle mage, he was openly gay, and asked in surprise if he had never heard of such a person. He looked at him closely, and sternly stated that he was having a very hard time right now. Ryder could have passed, but they were asked to accompany him. In this regard, they decided to ask the king for permission. They would try it at the end. He wondered what steps Gaines would take. The king greeted Gerald and Ryder with a smile. He sincerely congratulated them on their victory over the Dragon Lemon, an achievement befitting the high status of a rank 11 warrior. Their fame as the strongest in the kingdom reinforced the king's unwavering faith in their power. They confessed that they were not the ones who had actually killed Lemaine. However, the king never understood what it was all about. Real insists that they be allowed to meet with him, while Roy points out that such a meeting has already taken place. A portal suddenly opened in the hall next to He unexpectedly surprised everyone present, undermining even Ryder's resolve. He hesitated whether to go out, but Gaia's persistence convinced him. After pushing her a little, he himself took a decisive step outside. He called several guards and ordered them to appear. The guards rushed to grab Gaius, but their attempts failed, as he created a powerful barrier. They had never counted on using magic. I noticed that their attack was thoughtless, which only emphasized the strangeness of the situation. In response, he turned to them, asking them to listen carefully to him. It was stated that there was no point in listening to an outsider. The Lord immediately asked how he managed to get here. Deus replied that it was thanks to the magic of teleportation. According to the king, the barrier created by the legendary master, the barrier is impenetrable. Even teleportation magic cannot penetrate it. I asked if it was a coincidence that their legendary name was associated with gayness. When asked, he replied that only members of the royal family were aware of this. The Protagonist replied that no one had told him anything. The ruler was shocked. He immediately ordered the guards to take their positions. Above his head hung a portrait reproduction that combined the images of the ancient king and the protagonist. Both features looked similar, although it was obvious that age was not a characteristic that could be used to mark a true warrior. He can't believe it. The man decided to get hold of a saved contract from when he was still in power. He presented this document to the king, being absolutely convinced that the seal affixed to it belonged to the royal family. Release the guards. Although they resist, this step was necessary. The king has apologized, for his actions have no ill intent towards Lord Guy. If an opportunity to help arises, let him take it. He expressed his gratitude, apologizing for the direct manner of communication, but initially insisted on being registered in the kingdom under a different name. He impressed the ruler. According to the magician, it was obvious that without his intervention, the ruler would have been perceived as a true hero. Besides, everything would have looked much simpler he decided it was best to keep his name, as it was too common these days. Even if he had proclaimed that he had once been a legendary magician, no one would have believed him. He realized that there were a lot of boys living here, but why? He was convinced that this was not the best idea. In the case, Geiss intends to register his companion, whose name is I. The fact that she was a dragon shocked the king. Guy explained that as long as she took on human form, everything would be fine. The king followed their instructions. The boy asked her to behave like a real person. One more thing. The magician asked if he had heard of an organization that grants people forbidden magic. He realized that it was about the Brotherhood of the Blazing Star. It was asked if it really had that name. As it turned out, that was what the Royal Intelligence Department had named it. Ural doubted that they knew how to choose names, while Ryder insisted that the society was full of mystery. He will give the order to collect all available information about them. This will take some time. The procedure for obtaining a pass to enter here is not quick, so this task will be entrusted to the commander of the Knights. He would be happy to join in the help, but he has much more important matters to attend to. The video was confident that Your Majesty would easily handle the situation. However, the man emphasized that he was the king, and could not forget his duties and responsibilities. He realized that something was wrong here. It seemed incredible to him that the king would so often assign such tasks to his subordinates. However, the boy assured him that he could easily handle them. Reuters was not pleased, so the ruler immediately offered his sincere apologies. He asked if anything had happened. As it turned out, there were no serious differences between them and the country's commander-in-chief. They asked what he was really like. The girl replied that he was always hard-working. The boy suggested that he might be quite competent, but Jural denied this claim. The message came from the Knight Commander. Only a few hours had passed since the meeting. It seemed incredibly fast for him. He is truly distinguished by his extraordinary determination. It would be great if there was detailed information about the organization. What else could be there besides that? Everyone hoped to find details about the Brotherhood of the Blazing Star, But an unexpected discovery shocked everyone. The commander has been ordered to show them all due respect, but he insists that they strictly adhere to the laws of the kingdom. First and foremost is their mandatory report on the destruction of the dragon limit. Realized that there simply wouldn't be enough paper for all the records, and if something didn't suit his taste, he would immediately cancel the request. The gaze had discovered the true character of the Knight's commander. He insists that everyone play by his rules. There's nothing wrong with being famous, but if you retaliate for it like this, the consequences can be dire. Everything has to be perfect. He just asked for permission to complete his revenge. One of the participants suggested that Iris try to write this piece, an idea that unexpectedly surprised everyone. After trying, it became clear that Iris, being a dragon, would not be able to cope with the task. However, Hayes believed that her situation was not so hopeless, and therefore decided to write for her. The hero was upset when he realized that his powers were not as great as he had hoped. He planned to acquire additional magical knowledge for Biden, but fate had a different scenario. And, to his great regret, his body suddenly disappeared, dissolving into thin air. Completed. Juriel assumed they would be rejected, but the girl explained that too many aspects remained uncertain. He suggested that she try to do it herself, but she didn't know how to write, and her eye decided to do it for her. She hoped that Reuters would go beyond their capabilities and write much better. Style was secondary. The most important thing was the clarity and authenticity of the text. It is worth reading what he wrote, because his confidence inspires respect. Note that describing everything too formally and literally sounds like the work of high-ranking officials. He doubted that Reuters could write in that style, and Uriel seemed to have forgotten that he was always skillful at abbreviating text. He decided to go and give him the report. Message from the Knight Commander. Andermenos received a report of Lemaine's death, which he had not suspected. He says if anyone thought the report was decent, they were wrong. He gives them 5 minutes to reflect on its shortcomings. And then we'll meet again. Upon receiving the report, he assured that he would fix everything. However, the hero considered himself blameless and did not realize the essence of his actions. He asked curiously what exactly he had done, since it turned out that there was no ink in the brush at all. Reuters said that you just have to believe it. The fraudster stated that all the adjustments had already been made and offered to check the results. Meanwhile, the commander has his own team of professionals. Noted that it was better that way. Considering that these creations were born in the midst of battle, the result was quite restrained. He deliberately refrained from giving her a sharp look. She was, after all, only a dragon. Gerald wanted to find out what was holding him back. As it turned out, Reuters had left the text completely unchanged. It seemed that Uriel considered it his duty to find someone to correct the inaccuracies. He stated that he is a dedicated employee who inspires by his example and mindset. That is why Gerald and Reuter decided to move on to the next episode. According to the man, the control over the battle mages should be exercised by the knights. The report indicated that they were planning to form a group with the participation of Gerald and Reuter. He asked if this was really so. Guy, however, asked with interest what the problem was. The commander would categorically not allow this, as his participation would weaken the overall fighting power. Guy realized that he had lost faith in his own abilities. Maynard, in turn, was asked about his role. They asked what the word title meant. This question unexpectedly confused the commentator. They concluded that their king was truly hopeless, and the commander could not understand how anyone could take this clamor seriously. He decided to give it a chance. Tomorrow, Manus would test his strength using this technique. The next day, as soon as Guy realized that he was only expected to demonstrate his skills, he immediately showed his skills. Battle mages have immense power, but it can be really difficult to determine its level. That is why, for example, they cannot simply declare that their king has the same power. Ander was pleasantly surprised that the guy didn't back down at the critical moment. He sincerely appreciates the sharpness of his mind. If he beats the examiner, he will be accepted and allowed to form his own group. However, he decided to refuse. Let's not waste a minute. It's time to present the exam. A brave knight of the 10th rank of the order, named Gannis, had already left. Without a doubt, none of them had expected to meet a representative of such high rank. Since he aspired to enter the 11th rank, it is obvious that his strength exceeds the capabilities of the 10th rank representatives. He fights one-on-one, so he can at least somewhat gauge the strength of his opponent. But he himself is so weak that Guy is completely unable to determine his level. And even Geralt would not be able to cope if she was suddenly attacked with a force measured in 15 inches. it was revealed that the enemy undoubtedly possesses considerable power. According to Uriel, if you look at it from the perspective of a mere mortal, his power is impressive. But as a combat mage, the situation only worsens. Protagonist wondered what would happen if he ended everything with one ruthless blow. Unless he was hiding his power for some reason? In that case, he would have to find a way to postpone the fateful moment. He carefully considered the possible consequences of using all his power, doubting whether it would be the right move. The commander believed that this boy's silence was caused by fear. However, it is never too late to join the service. You can let the girl move forward and experience its power. After all, since she is also joining their group, it is imperative to inform her about it. It was impossible to admit weak individuals into the 11th rank. If anyone proved unworthy or powerless, let them feel responsible for their own inadequacies. She agreed without the slightest hesitation. Seeing that the girl was not just sitting idly by, Hayes realized that if he didn't come up with something now, Iris would definitely start a fight. Time to begin. The opponent turned his attention to the lady, asking if she was of sound mind. After all, he himself holds a prestigious title. She was clearly aware that she wanted to make sure that after a while, her task would be reduced to defeating him. She asked the boys for their opinion on whether she could determine her strength. Dee knew nothing about the subject, and the idea was too ambitious. One single mistake could always be the fatal blow that ended everything. The commander noticed how Gaius was holding her back, fearing that she might die. After all, they were just pathetic, wandering battle mages, from whom one could not expect much. It was already clear how different their powers were. He didn't even know if his behavior was the result of genuine stupidity or a clever simulation. In fact, it wasn't her who should be defeated. It was him. The idea was to get something that would allow them to show their power without having to fight. He drew attention to the statue of Manhwa, towering above everything, and tasked it with bringing. This angered the commander, but Hani confidently reassured him, emphasizing that there was no reason to worry. After all, she was made of a unique material, a true ally of Mithril. This comforted him. The enemies would not even be able to inflict a single scratch on her. He managed to destroy the statue. Should she be allowed to join the fight, given their opinion? Iris happily agreed to this. She shattered the Mithril statue, and even from such a great distance, her action had an incredible effect on the course of events. In the dark of night, he would feel deeply ashamed to engage in combat with the little girl. Let her choose her own path. So now everything is in Geiss's hands. He remarked that it was a pretty good excuse, if he really was hiding his true strength, because he was adept at it. He even wondered how he managed it. The commander understood that Gaius had decided to fight, and gave the order to the Hannibals to join the battle. The enemy called for us to come closer, and was preparing to unleash all its power. He had grown somewhat stronger, but Gaius still hadn't seen any of the spells he was preparing. If he was hiding them, then his technique was incredibly skilled. He remembered that according to the king's order, Hani could not be killed. The commander, without wasting any words, noted, if he did not hear, then it was his problem. The enemy's weapon shattered into pieces as it mercilessly crashed into another enemy. He didn't realize what was happening yet. The boy didn't do anything yet because his clothes were enchanted to repel damage. It was common for magicians to place such spells on their belongings. Now it was his turn. He insisted that I not make any strange noises, because they would give the impression that Guy was mocking him. And indeed, Guy dropped the plow. He even tried to defend himself. The protagonist was convinced that this was part of his strategy. However, victory will not be complete until the opponent is defeated. So we must beat him to the final triumph. The enemy has not yet considered surrender options. He realized that he had no extraordinary strength hidden within him. What a disappointment. The enemy fought until his last breath. Although he seemed weak, his courage was impressive. He concluded that his will was not broken, because Guy was not giving him a chance to speak. Guy instantly understood the essence of the situation, and asked if the commander now recognizes you as a creation. To the man, no way. Did they really believe that they would encounter only one enemy on their way? Let them not be carried away. Order Gerald to engage them in battle. If they aspire to join the 11th rank, then it stands to reason that their strength should match that level. He will not allow this group to enjoy their freedom. The fact that he forces Ural to arrange a fight with Guy unexpectedly surprised him, although he was eager to assess her fighting potential. The girl is sure that if the fight began, the arena would suffer serious damage. He reassured her not to worry. If necessary, he would call his men, who would quickly set up a solid barrier around them, opening up the possibility of fighting on their own terms. I'll ask him what he thinks. Day said it piqued his interest, and he'd really like to see it come back. The girl didn't want to engage in battle with him because, frankly, she simply had no chance of defeating him. He only wanted to test her abilities, but all the jury members unanimously decided to attack him. He ordered her not to hold back her strength, because if she did not unleash her full power, he would be denied the duel. The battle for return. I wondered why Guy was so determined to start a group. He seemed extremely vigilant, so Guy needed to prove that his intentions were completely honest. During the battle, Menoza insisted that holding back one's strength was forbidden. If he noticed that the participants were not fighting at full strength, he immediately refused to organize the game. After that, Geis insisted on attacking with all his might, as he wanted to personally see her capabilities. However, the girl doubted that she would be able to win. To be honest, she would prefer to avoid fights. Given their commander's orders not to hold back, they concluded that they could raze the place to the ground. However, Menues asked them to stay. Urgently call for knights of rank 7 and above. They suggested starting the battle immediately. He realized that the moment for making a decision to create a barrier had already passed, and they were convinced that his opinion would change over time. The author firmly stated that he would not abandon his decision. His professionalism would not allow such a change. These are basic principles, but when you learn to effectively control your magical power, you can gain a huge advantage to compress magic in this way, you can strengthen the spell. Jurel noted that this technique requires considerable stamina. Reiter expressed admiration, noting that it is truly impressive. And it is not just a matter of concentration or accuracy. It is the result of hard training and conscientious work. According to Guy, using this technique causes a phenomenon called primordial magic. But forbidden magic allows for even greater power, which is what he seeks. Moreover, such power can be obtained by combining the abilities of several sorcerers. Without a doubt, he is a true master of his craft. Even with the resources we have, we can get an extremely powerful result. The commander interrupted him and asked why the work wasn't finished yet and why all the wizards were acting like this. This is what Gaius heard from the man who had put in so much effort to create the barrier. Jurel noted that the work could have been completed in an instant, but it was customary for sorcerers to prepare carefully over a long period of time. From the night reports, it is clear that the barrier is practically empty. Construction completed. Orders were given to raise the barrier immediately. Maynaus ordered them to be ready for further action. He noticed that just one of their shockwaves could break through his barrier. Moreover, a sudden desire to kill his opponent instead of a regular duel flared up inside him. He advised us to refrain from doing this, because trouble awaited us. I'll try to be more careful, but if the commander dies, I don't care. Gerald replied that in that case it wouldn't be possible to get permission. He cast the spell. The knights noticed at once that Lady Gerald's magic circles were extremely sophisticated and intricate. He also had a strange feeling, as if he were witnessing the fall of a comet for the first time. Although this was not the first time, the fall of the comet this time took on an extraordinary complexity. They realized that it was planning to cause a shooting star that would destroy everything around. She was convinced that by allowing her enemy to notice her spell, she had already suffered defeat, but she had never met anyone who could stop this powerful sorcery. The girl summoned her friend. She was certain that she would destroy everyone who was near her. Gaia understood that her incredible destructive power would be fully revealed if her opponent was not a man. Grimace immediately ordered the barrier to be reinforced. The barrier was already beginning to succumb to destructive influences, so the commander strongly called for its speedy restoration. He still remained in the same place. According to him, this spell required careful preparation and a considerable amount of time, and she performed it incredibly quickly. He could see that not a minute had been wasted. However, the girl immediately sensed that his face did not reflect any surprise. She had not planned to say this, but his behavior struck her pride. It was his time to act, and Earl gave him the opportunity to try. He realized that he was holding some mysterious artifact. The guy reminded her that he was the one who got it first. His spells are extremely slow to execute, but he has created an artifact that significantly speeds up their readability. Ural noted that this is quite a genius move. He was preparing to introduce a fighting style that was noted as ideal for dueling second and third rank opponents. For her, this could become the basis for a magical confrontation. He directed the spell upwards, which enraged the girl. The commander warned that another such mistake would lead her to defeat. As the first process reached its climax, he was already preparing the next one. Ural realized that this was a multi-stage attack and immediately focused her attention on the magic circles. He was asked a question. What do these circles mean? Can't he use a spell correctly? The girl thought. Despite the fact that he hides his true power, she was able to assess it by leaning on the monofleet. While the real spell takes effect, let them work on this task. He used hellish power. She couldn't figure out what spell had been used, Uriel decided. In response, she decisively used a magical reflecting stick. Please make sure she sends them back next time. I realized that Gerald had anticipated the spell in advance and acted accordingly. He didn't expect much from her, but this guy had unleashed a quantum explosion, appeared in the middle of the barrier. The knights could not comprehend the power of this phenomenon, as there was no sign of its origin. Since he had no rank, the best decision was to retreat. Ask Gerald not to dodge, but to strike. He considered the very fact that she was still standing was a significant achievement. As he had predicted, it was her turn to attack. But she was wrong. His attack was not over yet. The girl had completely forgotten about the spell he had been working so hard on. Guy was explaining that creating the first mark spell took an extremely long time, so it was much wiser to let him focus on creating a protective barrier. At the same time, Ural wondered if this was an accidental meteorite fall. The commander noted that the meteorite fall was the first stage of the Uriel spell. As he predicted, Guy turned out to be an absolute worthless person. He was aware of his inexperience, but he spoke as if he understood everything in the world. The meteor barrage he had used against Lyman had been much faster. Ural assumed he was holding. I think she could protect herself even from this meteorite. He replied that the spell remains unchanged and has the same power. The girl was suddenly overcome with astonishment. The knight raised a powerful roar, and she realized that in front of her was actually a meteorite. The commander could not understand why his spell turned out to be more powerful than the shooting star over Ural's. The knights realized that their end was coming, and it was time to escape. The difference lies in the compression of magical power. When Gaius fought the dragon, he reduced the area of the spell, giving it incredible power. Uriel was amazed that he had chosen such a destructive technique. She still had much to learn. And then came the moment of a wild explosion. Sanders' barrier crumbled to pieces. Minos, the wandering mage, could not understand how this could have happened. Suddenly, a mithril statue rose in the air, rapidly approaching. Right above the commander, Uriel had somehow miraculously survived the danger. In fact, Gaius had chosen a spell that matched her strength exactly, so that there was just enough left to block the attack. The girl wondered if this was the very thing that had saved her. She noted that she had learned a valuable lesson from the fight. He added that it was much easier to unblock a spell when you knew how it worked. So, speed of magic creation and thoughtful tactics in battle were more important than sheer brute force. Think of it this way. The knights were aware of her star shower, but not of his meteorite fall. If he hadn't warned her, she doubted she would have survived. According to him, delaying spells is the most basic technique a sorcerer can use. In addition, it is an excellent distraction for the enemy. However, such weak magic cannot be used to win a real battle. The whole time the boy was thinking about how to strike. He replied that it wasn't as if he would have recognized his group without victory. The battle is still ongoing, as Mina sanctioned the team's actions. He handed him the permit and ordered him to pick it up, immediately leaving the scene. Hayes realized that everything he could only dream of had already been achieved. He asked if he could look around with magic again, since everything seemed to be over. The commander replied that the spell was enough. Everything had been ready for a long time, and it would have been really useless to interrupt it. Manos exclaimed, "Thanks to the spell, Petty appeared, and the commander was orphaned by the unheard-of power." Instead of panicking, the knights hastily called for a doctor. He felt satisfied that he had been dissuaded from a dangerous decision. Uriel doubted whether words alone could really convince him. Iris only now realized that she had already Knight apologized for her unwanted intervention, trying to get. According to him, the king was eager to meet them. He invited them to accompany him to the seat of royal power. Most likely, the events related to yesterday, but the knight did not think it was worth blaming him for anything. He acknowledged that Commander Maynuth had exceeded his authority and apologized for it. He also thanked them, but his words remained incomprehensible to others. It was noted that although the man was well versed in political matters, his abilities as a commander left much to be desired. This made any attempts to establish an effective dialogue with him difficult. Thanks to them, he finally understood how to communicate with him. The governor turned to Manos to ask whether the information Mr. Hayes had requested had been provided. He replied that as far as he was concerned, he regretted the events that had happened. However, he could never stop him from forming the band. The king, however, never understood his words. It turned out that some lesser mage had been allowed to take 2 11th-ranked members from their kingdom. He considered it a heavy loss for them, but Guy turned out to be extremely stubborn and difficult to negotiate with. There was a moment of silence as the king requested a room. He devised a cunning plan to prevent his group from forming and to banish him from the kingdom. The king, with a slight sneer, asked if the name Geis had any meaning for him. He paused for a moment, and then the king explained. It was Geis who had defeated the sinister dragon when even 2 11th-rank adventurers had failed to deal with it. He asked if Manos had realized this fact. He was overcome with surprise, convinced that the dragon had been destroyed by Ryder and Gerald. However, Minos realized that he was the one. According to the ruler, all the details were set out in the report he had been given. The commander, apologizing, admitted that he had missed this very point. He was offered the choice between demotion and death, which undoubtedly shocked those present. The situation became unbearable. The king came to the conclusion that he had deliberately chosen death. The miners began to dispute this conclusion. Eventually, he sent him to a small village, as realized that this was the fate of those who disobeyed the king's orders. From now on, the government would decide the fate of the disobedient. He was undoubtedly flattered by his willingness to help. But wouldn't it have been wiser to delegate the task to someone else? The king explained that this was done to reduce rumors about them, since the commander was given the task of gathering all information regarding the Burning Sky Brotherhood. However, the boy asked if he could also get information from him about forbidden magic. According to the king, they tried to collect it, but the process turned out to be much more difficult than expected. No one knows exactly what is considered forbidden magic and what its significance is. He believed that this was easy to recognize. If a phenomenon did not fall under generalized theories of magic, then it was automatically classified as forbidden magic. All of their artifacts clearly belong to forbidden magic, as their essence cannot be described using existing knowledge of magical powers. They realized that they were unable to reveal the secrets of how his artifacts worked. Everything turned out to be completely different. Welcome to their world. The guy here is trying to see what others can't. They've entered. According to the main character, the entrance should say, Royal Treasury. But how can such a place resemble a landfill? Yuri will immediately declare, this is definitely a trap. For example, let her examine this artifact carefully. In her opinion, it has every reason to become a real national treasure. An experienced guide who understands everything confirms its uniqueness. Your island confirms its words without hesitation, and Iris shines like a precious jewel. Gaev has not felt a single drop of oppressive magic, and besides, almost half of what he created is real garbage. She decided that since this shining stone seemed like trash, it could be hers. However, Gerald explained that it was a true national treasure. Subtly, he sends another man. Look closely, and you'll see how the magic creates a distortion around the object. This distortion is impossible to describe using conventional methods. It belongs to the primary laws of magic. It is the culmination of magical power, its highest manifestation. When the girl's opinion was expressed, Ural immediately recognized it. She had used this approach even during her time in the organization. The girl had no doubt that it involved forbidden magic, but she categorically did not recommend using it. The artifact empowers a person using forbidden magic. However, because it changes the very essence of the soul, the risk of death becomes incredibly high. One person, or maybe 100, can survive this ordeal. He thought that the situation was not as bad as one might have assumed. The road opens up before him again to see if he will die or if he will be able to save his life. They concluded that the process not only improves a person's physical abilities, but also changes their soul. However, only 1 in every 100 people survives. It was an acceptable opportunity, so he decided to try his hand. He was about to ask the others not to breathe in the smoke, but in the meantime, Guy felt a magical power envelop him. She felt her stomach growl from the overwhelming nausea. Ryder understood that even for Guy, this situation was too stressful. Euro explained that, noting that this was not the kind of magic that was normally used, he expressed his concern for the condition of the boys. And then it is magic that transforms the soul. This is the most accurate description. He has already lost part of his humanity, taking another step towards becoming a star creature. And to understand what the concept of less human really meant, representatives of the gay community unexpectedly appeared on the scene. He explained that he had managed to compress magic to such an extent that it had turned into pure energy, a true fusion of primal power. Ural immediately noticed that this was the fusion he had once promised to master, and now, as if enchanted, he could summon it with a single snap of his fingers. Ryder had heard that such a skill was available only to truly rare masters, and he doubted that he would be able to achieve it the first time. Dai decided to conduct a small experiment. The last thing he did. According to Guy, all you have to do is shoot. Tell the others. Because if he lost control of the primal magic, the kingdom could disappear from the face of the world. Reassure them that there is nothing to fear. A strange phenomenon appeared in the sky. Uriel believed that he had unleashed magic, taming its power at the same time. Gaius said, "Just watch everything." As soon as this mysterious phenomenon appeared, an iris began to form in its place. The boys were puzzled and could not understand where it came from. He understood what was happening. According to Ryder, it looked like another manifestation of Guy's magic. Iris desperately begged for this horror to stop. This fusion of primal magic is extremely unstable and could explode at any moment. That's why Guy quickly made it disappear. The object appears completely dark due to the extremely strong gravitational force that prevents light rays from escaping. He knew that forbidden magic would allow the energy to be compressed so much, but the end result exceeded all his expectations. This is a force of attraction from which not even light can escape. Day's guess indicated that he had created a real black hole. It was the magic of the forbidden that held an incredible attraction for him. Guy decided that this would be enough for him. He was stunned that he could actually control such a grand, terrifying power. Although the mechanism of its action remained a mystery to him, he was convinced that Guy had acquired extraordinary powers, and he replied, "Yes, it's me. They need to acquire even more such artifacts of forbidden magic and master the art of controlling them." He was determined to do everything he could to gain strength. He couldn't believe he had acquired such power so quickly. According to Guy, the answer was pretty obvious. A few years ago, he had conducted research on souls that turned out to be very similar to the process of erasing his own soul. The girl asked why he did it that way. The guy explained that it was a way to rewrite his own track. Iris didn't understand his plan, because it all reminded her of something involving the use of paints. That boy has enhanced his powers through forbidden magic, and their next goal is to find a large number of similar artifacts. It seems they can't be found anymore, and for now they are waiting for news about their brother. He suggested training, to which Deus replied with the question, "How do you see it?" Ryder realized that his real goal was to test their fighting skills. She expressed her agreement. During the fight, she gained invaluable experience and is looking forward to new training. Meanwhile, Ryder emphasized that now it is his turn. Apparently, she clearly expressed her desire to engage in training. They decided to start by testing their own strength and skills by repeating the steps he was taking. Next, please move on to the next step. He thinks that it might be better to spend time training Iris first. However, the girl, not showing enthusiasm, hesitates, and he noticed that the girl didn't seem at all enthusiastic about her training. Iris replied that that was just how it was. It was all because she had been caught off guard. They asked if she was okay, because she looked extremely anxious. She confidently stated that she was fine, and without hesitation asked, "Will you kill me if I don't try?" She didn't understand what he meant by his statement. Dai didn't intend to kill her, as the girl had explained that his goal was to expel her from the group. Dai, however, firmly believed that since she was a dragon, she would undoubtedly be able to destroy everyone, so it was better to get rid of them. He asked if she really intended to eat them. Iris, of course, had no such intention. He leaned over and pointed out that even if she wanted to, she could try. However, the girl enthusiastically repeated that she did not plan to eat them. Good. Iris is currently the strongest of all, and since she is a dragon, her power can only grow. She is not held back by limitations like labels or other designations. Real Madrid realized that their expectations for her were extremely high. This clearly pleased Oko. She admitted that she was happy about this, but as a dragon she was unable to wield magic. Gay advised her to begin training in the art of magic. The girl was pleasantly surprised, because she had previously stated that she did not know how to use magic. According to him, magic on the battlefield gives a significant advantage. Again, he tasked her with destroying that target using appropriate means. Iris didn't know how to use magic, and E sternly warned her not to do anything foolish. After all, even her dragon's breath was imbued with real magical power. I didn't know that. It turns out that many dragons believe they are incapable of controlling magic, when in reality their abilities are much more powerful. Assistant. Let her try to release her breath through the staff, using her own power. Just remember how he does it when he is in dragon form, and transfer those impressions to the staff. Iris understood. She was surprised that the staff could actually shoot fire. The boy emphasized that she should not forget that if they were together, she would stay in the same place. Perhaps his first experience would be extremely difficult. However, the girl could not leave everything as it was. After all, she was impressive. She bravely tried to hit the target using only her mouth. She achieved her goal. Gaia doubted that she could do it using only her mouth, and did not even expect to succeed on the first try. However, this is exactly how she does not see her goal at all. It is necessary to carry out a few more unsuccessful attacks. She decided not to intervene, even if she appeared at the scene. They say it wasn't just target shooting. They had to practice real skills. Her skills are truly impressive. But does she realize that she can't hit because her mouth blocks the beam? The girl replies, "I'm a dragon, and shooting is much easier for me." Smiling, he realized that the enemy certainly hadn't expected such a surprise. Deus confirmed his words, noting that the situation needed to be made more difficult. So, the plans continue. The virus, they moved like lightning. She tried to hit at least one of them. Hayes realized that the shot itself limited her view, so it was best to try using the staff. In fact, she could incinerate them all in an instant. She decided not to aim, but instead to focus on increasing her combat power. It was the complete opposite of what he expected to see. Iris was glad she was able to notice her. It worked. The magic proved to be extremely useful. She decided to call this spell Irish. It's great for Guy that she has mastered magical skills, but he still doesn't recognize this achievement. The grade remains 0. The girl never understood his position. It turned out that if you were planning on using such a large amount of magical energy, the cost of learning to control it first was simply unavoidable. He doubted that such power would be able to accurately hit its target during a real battle. Iris felt disappointed, because to her it seemed much easier than what he had imagined. He decided to conduct a little experiment. Let her be the target. That way Guy can assess his own strength. Raider felt uncomfortable engaging in battle with the little girl, and the protagonist warned him not to pay attention to her appearance, because she, after all, is a truly powerful opponent. He believed that even if he were completely exhausted, he would still be able to harm her. Reuter did not realize how terrible her power really was. He managed to dodge, realizing that the attack was extremely powerful. Iris didn't like it at all. Everything happened extremely easily. Our actions were predictable, and every gesture was obvious. The girl, feeling the injustice of the situation, persistently urged him to stop his actions. Huge, let him try to dodge. She realized that the power of her spell was greater than the last time. Even Reuter could not withstand such force. Iris worried that she might have gone too far, although Geis was sure that he would handle the situation. At critical moments, his lightning-fast decision-making was impeccable. Reuter, on the other hand, was impatiently waiting for his moment of glory, ready to demonstrate all his greatness. And then, the man used his technique, known as the Wandering Blade. He cut the spell, which shone like a wedge, and instantly dodged Gerald's surprise attack. The boy already knew that magic could be much more powerful. I never thought I would encounter something like this. I realized that in reality, everything is not so carefree. An ordinary person would not be able to repeat such a trick. It seems that Reuter gives the blade magical power. Does he do it consciously? Theoretically, it is similar to how he reflects the spells of enemies. But believe me, he is capable of such things, although, most likely, he himself does not realize the principle of their work. It's his turn. Suddenly you take out your cane. By using the cane, you direct the force directly towards Iris. With the candy in her mouth, she clearly wasn't going to shoot. The boy realized that Reuter still hadn't come up with a strategy to disarm Iris. She hadn't intended to say it, but the magic was betraying her. Realizing she had been caught, the girl suddenly pulled out her staff. Dea immediately saw her magic flowing through it. A powerful blow so strong that it can even knock down the creator himself. She felt joy, because she had learned to control this power. He realized that his plan had failed. However, Hayes's representatives did not share his opinion. On the contrary, they believed that his actions had caused its division. She couldn't utter a sound, so after a while she decided to resort to her staff. It was an extremely effective way to get her to use him. Even gay men wouldn't think of such an idea. Reuter doubted that she could do it. so he relied entirely on his own strength. It was necessary if he still had a candy left. He held one out. Being part of this squad gave her true happiness. Gaius, having mastered magic, confirmed that today's goal had been achieved. However, Gerald was puzzled by some mystery that Ryder could not understand. Over time, Iris gained even greater power. Inhabiting the vast expanses of space, the spirits of the burning stars gain new power. Throughout their inexhaustible existence, they grow stronger, absorbing the power of their fallen enemies. Those who have won victories countless times surpass even the gods in strength and depth of knowledge. The gaze could not harm him, and the reader's mana reserves were almost depleted. I didn't expect such a difference between them at all. There's no time. We'll have to use their trump card. Park, Dragon, and Iris must save this world. It was suggested that they be addressed with more respect. The gaze politely approached Mistress Iris with a request to say something. The enemy was defeated. She was unmatched. Gaia realized that even now he could teach her nothing. According to Jerul, only the best was expected of her. I decided to throw her a spectacular swan feast. Reuter was confident in the genius of her plan, but she remembers it solely through the association with Kay. She was convinced that she had a huge amount of candy, but later realized that it was just a dream. The author was no less cruel. Why wake her up when she was enjoying a wonderful sleep? According to him, she bit so hard that she left noticeable marks. Uriel. He wondered where exactly they were going, because the gay community just wanted them to see it. A real battle ensued. He wanted to show them something. The girl immediately recognized the observatory, and the boy told them that their magic telescope was extremely... They will be able to enjoy the vision of the power flowing from the spirits of the burning stars. He was the true embodiment of the spirits of the cosmos. According to Guy, there are many such spirits in space, and their battles have been going on for more than a minute. Over 1 billion years. This unexpectedly struck the boy. Here, a view opens up of spirits located at an impressive distance of 200,000 light-years. Molodic suggested that we take a closer look at this amazing spectacle. He just saw something shiny. As it turned out, they were the souls of burning stars. According to him, this sight is amazing. He noted that from this location, objects as far away as 200,000 light-years can be seen. This is an impressively vast distance, opening up incredible opportunities for observation. From here, you can see their full power. Jury will soon realize how grandiose it is. The girl said it was... She pointed out that if Guy continued his monotonous lecture, Iris would fall asleep again. However, Guy is sure that she is not bored, and understand what exactly she was doing. The relator explained that she somehow identified him with Candy, and that every time her speech became slurred, she would take a step, as if biting off something. I decided to present it to them in a way that everyone could understand. He didn't realize what exactly had happened, while the children discovered the true nature of space. What he saw through the telescope was instantly absorbed into their three-dimensional space. Only for a moment did an unusual creature fly by. The last thing left of this creature turned out to be the spirits of the burning star. I adjusted the dimensions a little to make them easier to understand. Now this change will soon cover the entire plot. He was stunned that he had eaten it in one bite. The gaze explained that this was the path they had chosen. Find other spirits near their planet, but their power will certainly not be inferior to this one. I realized that there were a lot of spaces, only 200,000 light-years away, indicating an even greater force of the phenomenon before it reaches its destination. Or he may be completely absorbed in someone's story. He ponders what power means in space, and strives to acquire the power that will allow him to withstand any challenges. They are at a fundamentally different level of awareness. They still have a long way to go to reach my level. They were thought of in the same way. Without proper training, they posed no threat. Gaius doubted that they could defeat even the weakest spirit. The concept of weakness is extremely vague. All those once considered weak have long since been swallowed up by the more powerful, having existed and fought tirelessly for over 1 billion years. The only way to tap into their power is to use the highest magic and nothing more. They must resort to the pinnacle of magical art, the most powerful magic of the Brotherhood of the Burning Star. Magic that comes from spirits is radically different from human magic. The power of spirits does not disappear even after their death. It is likely that the Brotherhood managed to obtain the corpse of a spirit that once ended up on their planet. They gained the ability to extract the highest magic compatible with humans from him, and seal it in artifacts similar to the ones he used last time. They are able to give objects incredible power and produce them in large quantities. In other words, to obtain the power of an artifact, you need to It is necessary to overcome a reduced version of the imprinted spirit. Find the Brotherhood layer. This is where data about those who have successfully mastered magical power is stored, as well as information about the artifacts they created. He realized that his true desire was solely to appropriate them for himself. She said the kingdom would be sending them a report soon, and it would be a good idea to find one of their hideouts nearby. Deus was fully supportive of this idea. It seems he is in his room. He suggested that we visit him and, at the same time, asked how he was doing. He used the magic of detection. Reuter is convinced that the head of the security service would be shocked to learn about his true activities. Teleportation. The guy apologized for his unwanted intrusion and politely asked permission to. He asked if the Lord had found anything he liked in his treasury. Guy confirmed that he had. There was one thing there related to forbidden magic. The king was extremely pleased with this. If not for his intervention, the kingdom would have long ago suffered the destructive rampage of the Dragon Lynch. He doesn't want to pay for help with such a small thing. If he needs anything else, let him handle it himself. He only wants to learn about forbidden magic. Gaius, in turn, asked if he had managed to gather all the necessary information about the Brotherhood, as he had ordered. According to the ruler, the information is currently being collected based on one of the levels that was once discovered. They are currently carefully checking how reliable the data obtained is. An interesting man. The king noted the greatness of the lair. It was probably Layman who caused the ban. He made a list and asked what the chances were of finding anything at the site. The ruler replied that the location had been completely cleared. Almost no traces remained. From this, it was concluded that there was no evidence. The king explained that the information received was being verified. However, the soldiers sent to the scene of the events never returned, which greatly surprised the boy. It turns out that he concluded that the lack of soldiers returning could indicate a certain act. He decided to go there himself, so he asked the king for the location of this object. The king gave him a map, suggesting that he accept it as a token of his gratitude. They are far from grateful to him for all the information he provided them. According to the map, they should be directly in front of the lair. Uriel was eager to learn the details of the king's statements. Lyman had appeared just as the destroyed lair of the Brotherhood was discovered. Could this indicate that Lyman was the work of the Brotherhood itself? Gaius was skeptical of such an idea. The power of his forbidden magic was too insignificant. He was convinced that he had acquired it on his own, purely by accident. There was a path, 5 kilometers and 20 meters long, leading there. He could clearly feel strange streams of mana flowing from there. Raider could have recognized them if he had concentrated, but their remoteness made it difficult to fully grasp the energy. A shadowy figure sat by the old tree, and Roy knew that the boy was right. Something was wrong. All he could say was that he had a nagging feeling that something terrible was coming. Uriel noticed that they had an incredible ability to hide. Too good, even. Their mana energy was so subtle that it almost disappeared into the shadows. The writer didn't catch anything, and Jarell asked, how could the guys think they had already noticed it? According to Guy, they are not as weak as everyone thought. In fact, they are stronger than this pair. This discovery came as a real shock to the boys, and Ryder was looking forward to meeting them. Everything Guy felt was an unmistakable sign that this man was skilled in combat, and Jareel was pleasantly surprised by how skillfully he had already mastered them. She wondered if her opponents would recognize her if she used her dragon face to attack. Gaius sarcastically replied that they certainly wouldn't notice a huge dragon. It was much better to fight in human form, which she needed to get used to. They doubted whether it was worth engaging them in battle, especially if the opponents were stronger. However, the Gays considered them ideal targets for improving their skills. It seems they are ready to launch the attack first, because the boys will manage to save them. Although they had taken the first step, it was as if they had stopped in place. He wondered what plans they had in mind. They look threatening, but they don't immediately radiate warmth and friendliness. Face an honest battle mage? No, in that case they would undoubtedly do something. The jury, without hesitation, will turn to. He asked him if it wasn't possible that people like her had left the organization. Guy thought about it. Indeed, such a possibility existed. But they would certainly have taken at least some action. Be the first to show your kindness. Gay decided to appeal to the overwhelming majority, and asked what he was doing in such a deserted place. Remains replied that he was simply hungry, and so he decided to go hunting for edible monsters. Gaia pointed out that there were 2 bull-like monsters nearby, and that was where he was now. The distance to the monsters is 1 kilometer. The third marker has excellent long-range attack capabilities, allowing it to easily take out enemies without changing position. It occurred to me that the monsters might just run away. Wouldn't the mage have made an effort to destroy them? According to him, humans are almost non-existent in this area, and I really don't remember seeing them before. He felt no hostility, and assumed that the figure of a benevolent warrior had truly appeared before them. He cast a spell aimed in the right direction. He managed to dodge, and because of this the spell hit. It tore into pieces. The hero was stunned to realize that it was a spell that pierced the target from the inside. It was a real meaty abomination. He noted that he was well versed in such spells, as it was his specialty. But the avoidance was achieved solely through chance. The Bombat spell has no practical use, but its cruelty is simply incredible. The pain it causes is unbearable. Gaze asked who did it. He stated that a question cannot be answered with a second question. Although he was the first to express his doubt, it no longer matters. He promises to answer. The Brotherhood of Burning Stars, however, may have already forgotten about me. My help is indispensable to the dead. The enemy decided to start with the weakest of them, and used a deadly spear. Everyone was worried about Iris, because she was in unbearable pain. At the same time, she did not understand why everything was happening this way. The enemy was stunned by the defensive spell, which managed to stop the deadly attack. This seemed incredible to Guy, since Iris never resorted to defensive rituals. It's just a spell designed to kill people, but its power is not enough to deal with a dragon. The elders doubted that Guy would be able to handle him, since it involved two 11th-rank adventurers. Guy thought he knew about Gerald and Ryder, or perhaps he misunderstood something. He was convinced that due to the first factor, his strength was significantly inferior to the strength of the other. He felt a vibration of magic emanating from him. It seemed to penetrate directly into his soul, but he could not precisely define its essence. That's right, exactly. The opponent declared, "Stop, period." While performing the meat grinder spell, he wondered, had he always been like this, or had he perhaps undergone changes from forbidden magic? With this question in mind, he decided to check something out and left the magician, allowing him to do his thing. The perfect opponent for training. Let them join forces to defeat him together. It is Iris who must take part in this battle. He decided to enter the battle. Although Iris did not support this form of competition, she was extremely uncomfortable. The enemy considered the one who received the first sign a prankster, because he only used him as an opponent for training. He decided to send them to another world. Ryder had always reacted instantly. Once he literally waited for an opportunity to rush into battle. But now he had to act cautiously, coordinating his steps with his allies. He no longer waits for Gerald and Raydir to begin their actions. To stop the enemy, he delivers a blow that acts as his defense. Ural and Iris attack from afar, demonstrating impressive coordination, which is especially impressive considering the novelty of the close-knit group. Use the meteorite fall that Iris used for her own purposes. They believed they had struck, but Ryder doubted it. The enemy had cast a protective spell. Heiss was convinced of this too, as he had not sustained any injuries. To the enemy, this girl's magic seems extremely mysterious, and another spell clearly does not come from a human. He skillfully stopped the attack, relying on his wealth of experience. Rayder had never trained with someone who was inferior in strength. Despite his powerful exterior, the enemy inside is filled with doubts. He worries for his own safety. It seems that he has successfully repelled Ural's spell. Meanwhile, Iris has received a lot. She has united with a dragon. Her spell may seem imperfect, but its combat power is unmatched. It forces the enemy to waste their strength on defense. This is a fairly logical strategy for them, although Gaius doubted it would be effective. They should be able to sustain this strategy for a long time. However, it is likely that the adversary will change its course soon. The opponent decided to play with this. The third sign once challenged the fourth, attempting to start a fight. Gaia believed it was merely a provocation. He decided it would be fun, and so he wanted to cheer up his enemy. In response, the battle mage called him a fool and used a ball of light. He knew that the lightning ball was an electrical spell. It was not weak, but it was not powerful enough to kill Ryder. Its negative effect was manifested in paralysis, but in close combat even a small movement could radically change the situation. The enemy threw an electric ball, which came as a surprise to Ryder. The guy instantly understood what his opponent was after. This spell didn't have the power to kill Ryder, but it was enough to paralyze him. In close combat, every second can be decisive. This time Ryder managed to recover and almost hit the enemy with his sword, but the enemy quickly dodged. The spectacle was fascinating. Iris watched in surprise as Ural explained that this was one of his tactics. His body was covered in healing runes, which, if the wound was not fatal, would ensure his survival. However, as an alternative to the runic symbols, the method of sitting recovery could also be used. Notice that even the obvious anxiety on his face was a carefully planned part of a strategy to deceive the enemy. The protein scientist had no idea he had such skills. Battle planning. In any case, the enemy dodged brilliantly and immediately continued their actions. He wouldn't fall into that trap again, especially since Ryder had been using the monitor too much while treating that wound. I realized that most people don't exercise the same caution as. At that moment, they achieved victory and another success. The enemy spent a significant amount of mana to repel Irisa's burning attacks, then rushed into battle with Ryder. All this he did to prevent Irisa from striking her opponent. In a magical battle, the main task was to deprive the opponent of mana, because whoever lost it first would be defeated. Using Iris's spell to exhaust the enemy seemed like the best plan, but Gaia doubted that this strategy would work a second time. The main question was, who exactly would dare to strike? He wouldn't be fooled a second time. By using the lightning ball, Guy was sure that even if Ryder tried to repeat the trick, his opponent would recognize his moves in advance. So the second strike turned out to be absolutely flawless. He realized that Ryder could charge his weapon with magical power to neutralize the spell. It turned out that the first time he purposefully caught lightning, his opponent had no idea he was doing it. However, giving the enemy the opportunity to strike first is not the smartest move. Or maybe he has already planned something new. Here it is. The enemy proposed to immediately arrange a duel, cutting each other right in the very center. The beginning of the awakening of the muse is like a rebirth of inspiration. The two rivals met face to face again. She told Harold that she was willing to help, but she had to strike Ryder first. Not knowing what to do, the girl decided to act only if Ryder did not gain the upper hand. She will resort to magic. There are simply no other options. Even if Iris had hit Ryder, he wouldn't be considered dead. But Guy doesn't know anything about the injuries he sustained. Taking such a step in this situation is extremely risky. Everyone wants to help, but they don't have the necessary information. Confident of imminent victory, he immediately made a decisive and powerful move, and defeated the opponent who had struck Ryder with a lightning bolt. Deus was aware that Gerald and Ryder were not weak fighters, but all of their combat experience had been aimed solely at monsters. During the fight, it is clear that they are trying to solve everything with one powerful blow. This tactic is effective against creatures with high stamina, but when the opponent has their own unique fighting style, this technique loses its power. Instead, the opponent focuses on much less powerful strikes. Whether he is an assassin or someone else, he is perfectly skilled. Fighting against people is how the situation is described. For Reuters, this means the worst possible scenario. For now, he conserves mana, enduring close combat and parrying Ryder's attacks with his sword. However, at the most opportune moment, he will deliver the decisive blow, using mana. The Ryder spends a significant amount of mana with each step he takes. Ryder will soon run out of mana. Although the fourth sign is impressive in its power, in this case the advantage remains on his side. He himself understands this perfectly well. The enemy suggested surrendering and quickly ending his life, as he had no chance against him. However, he decided to eliminate him in the safest way possible. Ryder ordered the door to be closed. His opponent asked in surprise how he could not understand the obvious. Meanwhile, Ryder did not realize that his attack would make him too vulnerable.